Board of Supervisors to order, please. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing because following the Pledge of Allegiance will be a silent moment of reflection. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America and to the republic and one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will have the reading of the notice, please.
An educational meeting of the Marathon County Board of Supervisors will be held at the Marathon County Courthouse Assembly Room, 500 Forest Street, Wausau, at 7 p.m. on May 12th, and the agenda was duly signed and posted.
And thank you. And I would like to request everyone please silence their cell phones and any other electronic devices as to not be an interruption to the meeting. And I thank you for your compliance. And we'll proceed to roll call, and I'd ask everyone to please sign in when the clerk opens the meeting. And while we complete that, I'd like to welcome all of the visitors that we have with us, including the viewing public. And so we will proceed to the next item on the agenda as public comment, and no one addressed the clerk or myself as far as wishing to address public comment. So we will move on to standing committee reports, education reports and presentations. Any announcements by standing committee chairpersons or designees? Supervisor Robinson.
It's not a standing committee report, but the broadband task force will be meeting on the 23rd, Monday the 23rd at 3 o'clock in this room, and we'll be going over some of the historic.
Should I park it that way so we can tip?
Historic efforts to bring or expand broadband in the county. I encourage you, if you have an interest, to either, it's available through the web or attend in person.
Okay, any other announcements and or committee chairpersons designee reports? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. We are honored to have with us this evening we're honored to have with us this evening Sarah Dietrich Kasdorf. She serves and works for WCA, Wisconsin Counties Association, as the Director of Outreach and Member Engagement. Sarah began her working for WCA back in September of 1991 as a legislative associate working on issues related to taxation and finance, personnel and labor relations, judicial and public safety. Most recently, Sarah served as the WCA Deputy Director for Governmental Affairs and worked on issues related to health and human services. Sarah's received her BA in Political Science and History from St. Norbert College, located in De Pere. Please help welcome Sarah as she presents a presentation on roles and responsibilities of a county board supervisor. Sarah?
All right, good evening, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay?
Nope, it's not on yet, so just a second.
All right.
There we go.
There we go. Is that better?
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much, Chair Gibbs, for that introduction, and also thank you for telling everybody how old I am. I always cringe when people say, she's worked at WCA for over 30 years. You know, back when I started, I was thinking, wow, when somebody worked somewhere 30 years, they were really old. And now when it's me, I feel like it's even older. But anyway, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you. Again, I'm Sarah Diedrich Kasdorf, the Director of Outreach and Member Engagement at the Wisconsin Counties Association. I've been in this role since the end of December of last year. Again, prior to that, I spent 30 years lobbying on behalf of the association on a wide variety of issues. And I get asked a lot, well, Sarah, after 30 years, why is it that you went to your boss and said you want to change jobs? And I said, you know, I would much rather be out and about meeting with county officials than I would be sitting in the Capitol talking to legislators. So that goes over sometimes well, sometimes not. But no, I think it was time for a change. I really have a lot of respect for the work that our county boards do across the state. And so, you know, I thought rather than serving you in a legislative capacity, I'd rather come out, meet with you, meet with county officials, hear what problems, what concerns you guys have at the county level, and then see how it is we at the association can help you address those things. So I'm actually looking forward to my new role and continuing working in that new role for, who knows, maybe another 30 years. Okay, so today I'm here to talk to you about roles and responsibilities. I'm like, okay, is the,
You want to share it on the screen?
all right. You guys are. Oh, do I need, okay. You guys are way too high tech for me. All right, go here? All right, let's try that. But I'm left-handed, so I'm gonna just slide everything over this direction. And hopefully it will all work. Okay. All right. Scroll, scroll, scroll. Click. Click. All right. I apologize for that. I have to say, I did not grow up in the digital age, and my children remind me of that every single day. So, all right. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about roles and responsibilities today for county officials. Really, when we talk about roles and responsibilities for county officials, and the one place where one would go to find all the information they wanted to know on county government, besides our county officials handbook, which I hope all of you have received and read from cover to cover already, you would go and look at Chapter 59 of the state statutes. It's Chapter 59 of the state statutes that discusses such things as county authority. It discusses county governance structures. It discusses the county board. It discusses the powers and duties of county officers. It discusses, you know, how counties are deemed to be legally. It says that counties are a body corporate that can sue and be sued. And in order to enact those powers, counties do that through the adoption of ordinances, and they do that through the adoption of resolutions as well. It is important to keep in mind, however, that even though we have these powers and authorities written in Chapter 59 of the statutes, they are not without limitations. And oftentimes counties, especially if you've served on a municipal board before and you come to the county board, there's one significant change and difference between the county boards and our municipal partners. Our municipal partners have what is known as constitutional home rule authority. That means that our cities and villages can undertake any power or authority that is not prohibited in state statute. But for counties, it is the exact opposite. We can only undertake such actions as we are expressly allowed to undertake by statute. So if something does not have a basis in statute, we as counties are not allowed to do that. So that is a pretty significant difference from our municipal partners. I should also say that counties are governed by a board of supervisors. Chapter 59 of the state statute sets a limit with regard to the maximum number of supervisors each county board can have. That being said, there is absolutely no county at the maximum number of supervisors. Now, with most other groups, when I give this presentation, I play a little game with them. And I say, you know, the county with the least number of supervisors has 7 supervisors. Which county is that? Nope, it's not Florence. It would be Menominee County. But this next one, if any of you get this wrong, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Because then I ask, which county in the state has the highest number of supervisors, and what is that number? and it's 38, and it's Marathon County. So, you know, the game doesn't go over quite so well when you're sitting in Marathon County, because I think that should be a gimme for all of you. All right, so let's talk a little bit about administrative home rule. So until the mid-1980s, counties did not really have authority over their own administrative structures. At that time, counties went to the state legislature and received what is known as administrative home rule authority. So under administrative home rule authority, it says that every county may exercise any organizational or administrative power subject only to the Constitution and to any enactment of the legislature which is of statewide concern and which uniformly affects every county. But again, the same as I talked about earlier, that administrative home rule authority is not without limitation as well. And here's one example of that. Back in 2010, the Ozaukee County Administrator wanted to give his appointment of boards and commissions authority over to the county board chair. He thought that the county board chair should be making those appointments as opposed to him as the county administrator. The Attorney General said no. While you're trying to argue that under administrative home rule, you should have the authority to transfer that appointment power from the county administrator to the board chair, the Attorney General said he does not believe that that would be allowed in statute, and therefore placed that limitation upon our administrative home rule authority. All right, next let's talk about self-organized counties. Just about every county in the state of Wisconsin, minus a few, have passed and adopted ordinances to become a self-organized county. Now, the reason counties want to become self-organized is because it provides more flexibility on the manner in which the County Board of Supervisors can operate. There are three primary powers that you get, or you can get, if you're a self-organized county. The first is use of staggered terms. The second is you can have some flexibility with regard to how county supervisors get compensated. And the third is that you have some flexibility with regard to how you fill county supervisor vacancies. Now, I'll say this. You have to pass an ordinance in order to become a self-organized county. You have to file that ordinance with the Secretary of State's office. But those three powers that I talked about don't automatically come to you. You need to take additional action as a county if you want to use staggered terms, change the compensation of supervisors, or change how you fill county board vacancies. Most counties have done the final two things, and they've adopted them as part of their county board rules. The first one, use of staggered terms. No county has done that, nor do I recommend any county do that. Could you just imagine if we had county board supervisor races every single year? I'm sure the clerk would pull her hair out, trying to get everybody organized. Could you imagine having to redo your county committee structure every single year because you had staggered terms? You know, just even trying to train county board members. All you'd be doing is spending all your time trying to get somebody up to speed on their committees or on county policies if you use staggered terms. So while that is a possibility under the self-organized county statute, absolutely nobody does that. All right. All counties by state statute are required to have one of three forms of county government. You have to have either a county executive, a county administrator, or a county administrative coordinator. Depending upon what county you're in, these positions may look completely different. Now there's this little graphic up on the screen. I'm not going to tell you for certain that all of these numbers are 100% accurate and correct, but it will give you a good idea as to what the state looks like with regard to county administrative structures. So we have 12 counties that have elected county executives. We have somewhere around 33 full-time appointed county administrators and 7 full-time appointed county administrative coordinators. But then we have around 20 counties left. And again, if you do not have a full-time executive or a full-time county administrator or administrative coordinator, you have to give somebody the title of administrative coordinator. And that is where there's a lot of differences amongst counties. So for those counties that are remaining, there's about 10 counties that assign their county clerk that administrative coordinator title. There are a couple of county board chairs in the state as well that have the title of administrative coordinator, although if you ask the Attorney General will tell you that those positions are incompatible. There are a few counties that have their human resources director that serves as their administrative coordinator. There is one finance director that has that role right now in the state, one human services director that serves as the administrative coordinator, and then there's also one county highway commissioner that serves as the administrative coordinator as well. So amongst those 20 or so counties, the amount of authority, powers, and duties that are provided to that administrator coordinator position differ, I think, very greatly. So I'm going to spend just a little bit of time talking about each of these three forms of county government. So the county executive serves as the chief executive officer of the county. Their duties and authorities are outlined in 5917 of the state statutes. If you are a county that has a population over 750,000, which is currently only one county in the state, Milwaukee, they're required to have a county administrator. Other counties can choose to have, a county executive. Other counties can choose to have a county executive, and they would create that position either through petition and referendum or through action of the county board. Now, very similar to what you might think of when you describe the duties of the president or the governor, the county executive really serves as the chief executive officer of the county. That means they're responsible for enforcing laws, rules, ordinances that the county executive has the authority to administer. The county executive also coordinates and directs all administrative and management functions of the county. They appoint and supervise department heads. They also appoint members to boards and commissions. They are required to submit an annual budget to the county board. And the county executive also has veto authority. Now, that means that the county executive has the ability to veto any ordinances and resolutions that the county board has adopted. The veto authority that the county executive holds is oftentimes said to be greater and much broader authority than the governor of the state of Wisconsin has. Now, that being said, the county board can override any vetoes of the county executive with a 2/3 vote. All right, the county administrator. This is the form of government that you guys have in Marathon County. The county administrator is appointed by a majority vote of the county board of supervisors. That position is generally created by a resolution of the county board. The county administrator does serve as the chief administrative officer of the county. They are responsible for coordinating all administrative and management functions within the county that are not vested in other officers. They appoint and supervise department heads subject to county board confirmation. They also appoint members to boards and commissions subject to board confirmation. The county administrator also submits an annual budget to the board. There are two big differences between the county executive position and the county administrator position. The first one's obvious, and that is the ability to veto actions of the county board. The second one, though, is with regard to who each of these positions is accountable to. So the county executive is an elected county official. That means they're accountable to the electorate. The county administrator, on the other hand, is employed by the county board, and therefore the county administrator answers to the county board. So the county board has the ability to hire the county administrator. The county board also has the ability to remove the county administrator. The statutes also go on to talk about some of the things that a county should look for when hiring a county administrator. In particular, the statutes say that the county administrator should be appointed solely on merit. In appointing the county administrator, the board shall give due regard to training, experience, administrative ability, and general qualifications and fitness for performing the duties of the office, and no person shall be eligible to the office of county administrator who is not by training, experience, ability, and efficiency qualified and generally fit to perform the duties of such office. No weight or consideration shall be given by the board to the residence, to nationality, or to political or religious affiliations. Are you doing a checklist there, Lance? Yep, check, check, check. Meet all the requirements, right? All right. Let's move on to the County Administrative Coordinator. I am not going to spend a lot of time on this one because I do not recommend as a county you go backwards and go from a county administrator to a county administrative coordinator. But the county administrative coordinator duties are found in 5919 of the state statutes. Again, a county must designate an administrative coordinator if they do not have a county administrator or a county executive. Again, the county administrator, they're responsible for coordinating. You'll notice under the county administrator slide, it says you're responsible for managing the administrative and management functions. The county administrator coordinates those functions. And it's very similar, and it can be very similar to the county administrator position, but it does not have any appointment authority, and the administrative coordinator coordinates rather than supervisors. And again, some counties meet this requirement by appointing an elected official to that position. So let's move on to the County Board of Supervisors. What is your role? Now, as a member of the county board, it is your job to serve in a legislative capacity. Now, this differs greatly from the commission form of county government. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the commission form of county government, but some of you may have colleagues or friends who live in other states, or you might attend a NACO conference, and you might hear some other county supervisors, or actually commissioners from other states, talking about what they do and talking about how they run this department or manage that. That form of county government, the commission form of government, is not allowed in the state of Wisconsin, okay? So if you hear people talking about the commission form of government and you say, hey, why am I not doing that? It's because the statutes don't allow that type of county government in the state of Wisconsin. So we have a county supervisor system in the state of Wisconsin. That means that supervisors serve primarily a legislative function. That legislative function is limited to policy making. And you adopt policies and you make your policies in a number of different ways. You can do that through the adoption of resolutions. You can do that through the adoption of ordinances. You probably make a lot of policy decisions when you adopt your county budget. You also make policy decisions when you adopt your comprehensive plan, or if your county has a strategic plan, you guys are making policy decisions for your county. Now, all of your work as a county board and as a county board supervisor is really done cooperatively and collectively as a board. So no individual supervisor, no individual member of the board itself plays a role in the day-to-day operations of the county. Your role in your work is done collectively as a board. In so doing, once you set these broad policy goals for your county in your legislative capacity, as part of that, you may set some expectations. You may set some outcomes. You may set some goals for the county to meet. And you guys do have the ability to monitor the progress of the staff in meeting those goals, outcomes, and expectations. All right, this slide, a lot of it's repetitive, so I'm not going to go through it all. But really, the one point I want to talk about here is your title as County Board Supervisor, right? That term is a historical term rather than a descriptive term. It goes back to the time when Wisconsin was becoming a state, and we had to choose between the New York model of county government and the Pennsylvania model of county government. The New York model prevailed, which is how we ended up with county supervisors in this state. That means that as a supervisor and as a county, we carry out services on behalf of the state. Again, if we would have went with the Pennsylvania model, counties would more likely become the provider of local government services. But instead, our job as counties is to carry out the roles of the state. So when we take a look at the state statutes and they talk about county supervisors, the one question we really have is, given what I just said in terms of serving in the legislative capacity, making those broad policy goals for your county, what is it that you guys actually supervise? Nothing, right? Your term, your name, your title, it's really a misnomer in a number of ways, because you guys are really, it's a historical term rather than a descriptive term. And we always thank the legislature for creating confusion with that name. All right. Again, board roles and responsibilities. You adopt policy, and you hold staff accountable for implementing that policy. Now, if you want to go home, and you want to sound like you're really important, go home tonight and tell your spouse that Sarah called you all visionaries, right? How often do you go home? How often do you go out in public and somebody says, wow, you are a visionary, right? But I can't stress enough how important that role is, right? Your job as a county supervisor is really to serve as a visionary. You guys think long-term. You want to think about what should our county look like 1 year, 5 years, 10 years from now, right? What is our strategic goals? What do we want to look like? What are our services going to be 1, 5, 10 years out, right? And being a visionary, that is really an awesome responsibility that the electorate of this state placed on all of you. So don't discount your role as policymakers. It's extremely important. It is huge. It is huge to your county, and it is huge to all the constituents that you serve. Now, as a county board, of course, there's other things you guys do too, besides make policy. You guys are elected by a constituency, right? So you guys want to be accountable to the public. So if a member of the public calls you up and says, there is a huge pothole on the county road in front of my house, what do you guys do? You don't run out and fill that pothole, do you? You might reach out to your county administrator, whose job it is to make sure that these things are getting taken care of. Maybe in your county it's appropriate for you guys to talk to your highway commissioner about that pothole, right? It is not your role to go out and fix things and do things. Again, you're the policymakers. But let's say, for example, that somebody, one of your constituents calls, and they have a complaint about the county. Let's say they don't like the way they were treated by a county employee. What do you do then? In the same way, you don't go run out and fill the pothole yourself. You listen politely to your constituent. You make sure you understand what your county's complaint process is. You direct them to that complaint process, or you go and you talk to your employee. Again, who is your employee as the county board? The county administrator, right? So you reach out to your county administrator and you say, look, I received this complaint from my constituent. There is a concern. I think you need to look into it. And it is his job to do that and to take care of the issue moving forward. So again, that's how you are accountable to your citizenry, not only in making policy, but that is your role in helping to solve individual problems that may arise. The other thing you guys do as a board is you determine what services you guys are going to be providing, right? That's part of your long-term vision and strategic planning. You guys also adopt a budget, and through that budget adoption process, you're levying taxes. But again, your primary function is to enact policy. Now this I stole. I spent the last couple of weeks reading as best I could all of the county board rules that were online for all 72 counties. Now, if you want to find a job or something that's going to put you to sleep at night, start going on your computer, going on every county's website, trying to find their county board rules within their ordinances, and then read them, okay? That's very taxing on the eyes, let me tell you. But I found this statement in the Chippewa County Board Rules, and something very similar is also included in the Eau Claire County Board Rules. And I say it's a really good description of what the role is of the county board. And it says the role of the county board is to set the strategic mission and priorities for the county, establish the general policies by which the county is guided in its management of county affairs, consider and act upon resolutions and ordinances, provide financial oversight and build community relationships in support of the mission and priorities. The county board appoints the county administrator and monitors the county administrator's management of the daily operations and implementation of policy. So I thought that was a real good and concise way to say everything I just told you in a number of slides. All right, let's talk about the county board chair. One thing you may have noticed when I talked about the roles and responsibilities of the county board is I didn't quote anything from statute, right? There's not really a section in Chapter 59 of the statutes that says, here are all the roles and responsibilities of the county board. But Section 5912 of the statute does talk about the county board chair, and it does reference some of the duties and responsibilities of the county board chair. Specifically, 5912 talks about the county board chair countersigning ordinances, presiding at meetings when they're present, administering oaths to persons required to be sworn. And then there's other duties too that typically a county board chair would have. Oftentimes your county board chair represents the county at various events. Your county board chair oftentimes will act as the spokesperson for the county board. And it is also the role of the county board chair through parliamentary procedures and processes and Robert's rules and your county board rules and all of that to make sure to provide guidance and direction on getting issues moved through the county board. 5913 of the statutes does go on to say that county board chairs typically appoint committee members subject to board confirmation, but I know there are counties that handle their committee appointments differently. But 5913 actually specifically says that is the role of the county board chair, and they need to do that by June 1 of every year. But let's talk a little bit about the standing committees and the functions of the standing committees. Typically, when an issue first comes before the county board, what happens to it? It gets referred to a committee, right? And it is the job of that committee and the committee members to study the issue and really to develop a resolution to that issue. So your county committees play a pretty significant role in the policy development process. And so when you sit on a county committee, if you sit on your social services board, for example, you are probably going to learn way more about social services than you ever thought you would need to know or that you ever thought you would want to know. You guys are really going to become experts in the issue areas of those committees that you sit on. And that becomes important in your role in developing policy that affects those areas. Let's move on and talk a little bit about staff. So county board supervisors and county staff have vastly different responsibilities. County supervisors serve primarily in a legislative role, and again, we've talked about that extensively, but county staff, they serve in an operational role as well as an advisory role. So staff, they have an obligation to carry out their duties in a manner that's consistent with the policy direction that was adopted by the board. Staff also plays a role in assisting you in making those policy recommendations. Staff can provide advice to you and some direction to you with regard to how it is you may be able to resolve some issues. But staff typically do not make policy unless it's some internal policy dealing with the inner workings of their department. Now, as department heads, as staff, they're responsible for implementing policies and strategies set by the board. Staff thinks in shorter term. They work on the day-to-day operations. They look at the smaller functions. Your staff has to pay a lot of attention to the detail, and staff, oftentimes their work requires specialized training. Now, here's a slide that can get me in trouble at times, but I'm gonna go through it anyway. When you guys are hiring staff, what are some of the things that you look for in your staff? You guys look for staff that are educated? You're looking for staff that have experience? You might be looking for staff that belongs to the appropriate professional association so that they are keeping up to speed on their licenses, on their training, right? You want staff that can be bonded by the county. You want staff that can pass background checks, right? Now, let's talk about the qualifications for you to serve on the county board. What are those? You had to be 18, right? You had to live in your district? And what else? You can't be a felon, right? That's it. Now, that's where I get into trouble. Because that is not to say that the county boards are not full of bright, educated, experienced, really smart people, right? Because you guys need to be those things. Because again, remember, you're setting this broad policy direction for the future. But in addition to that, on the county board, you guys are elected to the people, elected by the people, right? You have local connections. You probably didn't get elected to this board because nobody knew who you were in your local communities, right? So you guys have those local connections. You're connected to the people to help you make those strategic plans and to develop that strategic vision. You talk to your constituents, right? You find out what it is they want. Let's talk about the difference between policy and administration. Typically, when you guys are having a debate on your county board floor about a particular issue, you're talking about the things such as what and the why. What is it we are going to do? Why is it that we need to do that? And your staff, once you make those what and why decisions, it's your staff gets to the detail work. They talk about the where, when, and the how. So for example, let's say your county decides that it wants to have a discussion about establishing a hiking trail system. The county board will say, okay, what? Do we want to have a hiking trail system? What does that look like? Will the system benefit the county? Will the system benefit our constituents? Is this a good idea for our county, right? Do we have money in the budget to do this? But once you guys make that policy decision that you're going to have that county hiking trail system, then once you make that decision, implementation of that goes to the staff. Then your staff has to make some decisions. They talk about the admin and operational pieces of that. Who's going to build and maintain the system? How many miles of that hiking trail system can we afford to maintain within a year? Who is going to do it? Should I contract that out, or should staff perform those functions? Those are the types of detailed questions that the staff gets involved in that the county board does not. Let's skip that. All right, this slide on leadership roles, I'm not going to read it. There used to be a slide, that's really a nice way to say just do not micromanage county departments and county staff. This is the nice way to say it. There used to be, somebody used to give this presentation and they wrote in really big letters on a slide, you know, the 11th commandment, thou shalt not micromanage. I didn't like that quite so much, so I took it out. We said it in a much nicer way here. Now, when we talk about the distinction between policy making and administration, there was a court case out of Outagamie County that I thought explained it really well too. So the Outagamie County Board of Supervisors back in 1996 decided that they wanted to lease the land around their county airport to a local farmer. They checked with the FAA, they checked with everybody, said there's absolutely no safety concerns with leasing this land to the farmer that is adjacent to the county airport. So the county board said, all right, we make the policy decision, we're gonna lease this land to the farmer. But the county executive said, no, I disagree with all of your research. I don't think that it's safe to do so. I am not going to enter into a lease with the farmer. And so they ended up in court. And what the court decided was that the county board's function is primarily policy making and legislative, while the county executive functions as an administrator and manager. Policy has been defined as a high-level overall plan embracing the general goals and acceptable procedures, especially of a governmental body. Legislative power, is distinguished from executive power, is the authority to make laws, but not to enforce them or appoint the agents charged with the duty of such enforcement. The crucial test for determining what is legislative and what is administrative has been said to be whether the ordinance is one making a new law or one executing a law already in existence. All right. So what happens when we don't have distinction between policy and administration? I think what we see happen a lot is we have county boards that instead of debating broad issues, tend to debate trivial things, minor details. And that really, by the way, makes your county board meetings really long. As a county board member, you guys really want to be proactive. Again, thinking in the long term. You don't want to be reactive. And those are the types of things that can happen when you start to blend administration and policy making. We're going to skip this set of slides here. All right. Let's take a look at the typical org chart for a county government. And this is the org chart for a county that has a county administrator, so this is the org chart that would apply. So we have the county board, sits at the top of the org chart, along with your committees. The county board hires the county administrator and has oversight authority over the county administrator. Then we have the department heads, again, who report to the county administrator. And then county staff reports to their department heads. Pretty simple, right? Your typical linear organizational chart. But where do the county constitutional officers fall on the org chart? Where do they fit in? What's their role? Well, Andy Phillips, our general counsel, oftentimes when he talks about this, he'll refer to what he calls the dual persona of the county constitutional officer. Because while county constitutional officers are independently elected, they also have to work within the county structure. So that means typically your county constitutional officers will come to your county committee meetings and talk to you about what's going on within their departments. They receive funding from the county at budget time. They have county employees that follow county personnel policies. They work very closely with county administration. But who are they accountable to? The voters, right. So while they work within the county structure, much like the county executive, they are accountable to the electorate. So this last set of slides, I'm not going to go over this with you. I am not going to read it all to you. You guys can review all of these in your own time. A lot of it is really just a repeat of everything we've talked about. But the one point I want to make is these slides, this next several set of slides, they're all titled Working Together as a Goal. Because that is really what we're talking about today, right? You guys all have the same goal. You guys all have the same mission. You want to provide the best services to the citizens of Marathon County that you can, right? You have a vision on your wall to be the healthiest, safest, and most prosperous county in Wisconsin. In order to do that, in order to make that happen, everybody needs to understand their role, the part that they play in reaching your county's vision, strategic goals, and mission. And if everybody does that well, it benefits the citizens of your county, and everybody wins. So with that, I think that is all I have for you. I'm not going to go over the rest of this stuff. Read it at your leisure. And I'm happy to see if there's time, Mr. Chair, if anybody has questions.
Absolutely. We'll open it up for questions for Sarah. So everybody now knows their proper role and responsibility as a county board supervisor, being elected and holding that position for a month and a few days. No questions. Sarah, you either put them all to sleep or you're educated them perfectly.
I was going to say, today has been one of these days where it's been a hard day. For me, I know it's been a long day because I did the county officials workshops, so I'm going to make a really shameless plug here for any of you who would like to attend our county officials workshops. The training not just designed for new supervisors, but really all supervisors can benefit. We still have 4 locations next week that registration is still open for. So if you have some time, either join us next week at one of our county officials workshops or join us at the virtual sessions. But today has been hard, not only because I was teaching all day at Cows, but it was 95 degrees out. It was humid. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't like this heat and humidity one bit. It makes me sick when it happens in July. But when I have absolutely no, no time to adjust for it, it's awful. It is terrible. So I know it's been a hard day for a lot of folks dealing with the heat and humidity. Makes you tired, right? So I won't take up any more of your time tonight. Oh, looks like there is a question.
Question. Supervisor Dickinson, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the word micromanaging, can you explain the difference between micromanaging and actually asking questions and delving deep into the details of a topic that we discuss? Because sometimes people use micromanaging, they throw it out there, and I think people take that as, well, I'm not supposed to ask questions, I'm not supposed to get involved. So can you kind of draw a difference between the two?
Yeah, so I think, and I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this and explain this. So again, is your role as a policymaker, right? You can certainly ask questions to help you understand issues. Those questions that will help you develop what that broad, visionary, policy, strategic goal may be, right? I think when you cross the line into micromanagement is when you start to talk to department heads about, or staff, about how they're going to implement these things to the nth degree. So, there are some, we have heard in the past, there have been some county supervisors that have gone into county departments and told them literally that they're buying pens that are too expensive. That, why are you buying these nice felt tip pens? You should be buying the cheapest Bic pens that there are, okay? Now, that's an extreme example, but it has happened. That is clearly crossing the line between, policy making and micromanaging. Again, information seeking to assist in policy development is absolutely fine. When you start to tell somebody how to do their job more specifically, I think that may be where that line starts to get crossed. And again, that's why when we had that slide that talked about you hire staff that have experience, that have training, that may be certified in their position. If it's a social worker, for example, that's why you hire staff that have those responsibilities or those qualifications, because they're the ones that have the experience and expertise on how to carry out certain policy goals.
Any other questions? Any questions by individuals on WebEx? Okay. Sarah, I want to thank you personally for coming up and spending an hour with us and providing us a high level of training on the roles and responsibilities of county board supervisors. So thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you so much.
And we will proceed on to review and discussion on the Tuesday meeting agenda items. Item number 9A, the memorial of Mao Kang. Any questions? Okay, next we will go to ordinances. The ordinance item 9B1, Town of Reed, rezone, Gail Butchkowski, ordinance 13-22. Any discussion? Supervisor Langenhan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was noted in the packet, but for a follow-up to the members of the ERC, during our public hearing, one of the members had mentioned that on the ordinance amendment resolution that the town of Reed submitted to Marathon County, on one of the questions, question number 5, they selected both the yes and no checkboxes. So it was noted in the packet that our staff reached out to them and indicated what the response was, but I just wanted to tell the members of the ERC that there was follow-up. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other discussion on the Town of Reed rezone? Okay, we'll move on to resolutions from the Environmental Resources Committee. Item 9C 1A, Town of Ringo, compensation, comprehensive revision and adoption of the town zoning ordinance and zoning district map, Resolution 36-22. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to item 9C2, Human Resources, Finance and Property Committee. Item 9C2A, approval of the 2022 budget transfers for Marathon County Department of Appropriations, Resolution 37-22. Any questions? Okay, we will move on to item 9C 2B, a resolution awarding the sale of not to exceed $24,165,000 general obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 22A for capital improvement plan projects, Resolution 38-22. Any discussion? Supervisor Robinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairperson. Just like to give some background. This is the final step in the process of implementing our 2022 capital improvement plan. Last year, during the budget process, we identified a number of projects and funding sources, including use of our fund balance and other funding sources. And these are the projects that we will be borrowing for. The county board earlier had adopted the preliminary authorizing resolution. On the voting meeting, you will have many of the appendixes filled in. We will be taking those out to bid that day on the 24th, and we'll be filling in all the appendixes. The language in the resolutions is prepared by bond counsel and is pretty straightforward. It just sets up we have to have a debt service fund and other requirements, but generally consistent throughout the state in terms of what those conditions are. But this is the funding mechanism to implement the budgeted capital improvement projects.
And just to add one addition is, like I said, as the chairman of Finance, HR Finance Committee has indicated, these are resolutions that are drafted by bond counsel, and so they're not really subject to amendment by this board. We don't have the authority to amend those because they are set by bond counsel for the purposes of issuing these bonds. So, any discussion? Okay, Supervisor Sadowski.
Yeah, I just had a question. Where can we find like your say like your all the different things you're spending on? Like, can we get like any more detailed, like more detailed?
Of where the 24 million is being allocated to?
Yeah, that's kind of.
The capital improvement project list, I will have the administrator pull that up.
The short answer is it's in the 2022 budget. It's in the last several pages. I'll show everyone where it is on the website. If you go to the department tab at the top and go to finance, you'll see a link for annual budget, and when you click on the 2022 annual budget document, if you go to the last several pages, and I'll zoom in, you have, and this we went through at the HR Finance and Property Committee meeting, so you can watch the video to refresh your recollection after today's meeting. But there are a series of projects beginning on page 105, and this is the capital improvement project list that was referenced by Committee Chairperson Robinson and the funding plan for those projects. So you'll see across the top of the document there is CIP fund balance, tax levy, grant funding. We're talking about this green highlighted list, the borrowing column. And you'll see each of the projects listed in the chart with the corresponding projected amount of each of those projects. When you get to the bottom, you'll see the grand total for projected borrowing based on the approved CIP funding plan of $23,827,939. Borrowing amounts in this, at this level, they're in $5,000 increments. You'll see the $23.8 million number. When you add on the costs of borrowing, as Chair Gibbs referenced, bond counsel and other attendant borrowing costs, much like a mortgage, when you have closing costs, that gets you to the
165.
24,165.
Okay, thank you.
Not a problem.
Any other questions? Supervisor Baker.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. So I have a question of clarification. We have $1,011,675 for HVAC replacement for jail administration and kitchen in the 22 budget under CIP funding, what Lance just showed us as a project to be funded from the borrowing. We have the same item and nearly the same amount as a pending project for ARPA funding in the April 12th HR finance packet. So if we borrow funds for a project and then later vote to use ARPA funds for that project, what's the process and any limitations for allocating the unused borrowed funds?
Christie, do you want to talk about the limitations on, once we do borrowing, what we can use borrowed funds, tax exempt borrowed funds for?
I have my laptop. I'm going to grab the top of the resolution language.
I have the resolution up on the screen, Christie. You
Oh,
want
do
the
you?
public purpose language?
Yeah. Great. Don't need glasses on. So what you're going to want to take a look at on the resolution that you've got up there right now is that it has the first paragraph is going to tell you why you're borrowing. And it says it's for the $24,165,000 for the public purpose of financing 2022 capital improvement plan projects, including equipment improvements to county buildings, parks, recreation projects, and other capital projects. So right now that project is in the 2022 capital improvement plan, so it meets the criteria for the resolution. If you would pull it out and use ARPA funding, there's another project that would be available for us to do in 2022. You can modify the 2022 capital improvement plan within this year and then designate the funding being the borrowing. So anything within that plan for this year that meets the criteria of being a capital project and it is approved by this board as a capital project in the year 2022 by resolution is available to be in the resolution for borrowing.
That answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Shavinsky.
Thank you, Chair Gibbs. I guess my question would be to understand, we seem to be a little bit on an autopilot here. And I understand, a budget's put together at the beginning of the year. You have no way of necessarily knowing that some ARPA funding is coming down the road 6 months later, 9 months later, what have you. But what concerns me is that we seem to be on perhaps a little bit of an autopilot that says, I'll just make up a number. We put in $1.5 million for a project, all well and good. Now all of a sudden we have another $1.5 million that came from the state or from the federal government, but we still went ahead and borrowed the money anyway. We set a number at the beginning of the year, and now we're kind of going, well, we have this free money that came along, so we're going to spend the other money anyway. How do we put the brakes on something like that and say, no, we're not going to double dip on the taxpayers?
Supervisor Robinson.
Well, I think it's not on an autopilot basis. And to get to where we are today, we had the preliminary CIP plan, the capital improvement plan. And one of the reasons you're seeing a very large amount is we're playing some catch up. because we deferred a lot of capital projects in the past, and we learned with the jail and the library where deferred maintenance isn't always a good idea because our cost to fix it went up considerably through leaky roofs and saggy floors. But in this case, we adopted the KIP last year. We had a resolution that went to the county board requiring a 3/4 vote, and that was approved earlier. Since then, there have been discussions on how the ARPA funds should be used and requests, and we currently have approximately, for this year alone, we can spend the ARPA funds, we can commit them between now and December 31st of 2024, but we must spend them by 2026. We have as many requests as we have dollars for that entire period of time. And while some projects have been flagged as potential ARPA funding, I think we have many more needs than we have funding available. So we're still in the process of evaluating those projects, but if you look at where the feds will allow the spending, you have two tests with the ARPA funds. One is what will the feds allow? It's in the public health, it is in the people that were impacted by the pandemic, individuals, communities, businesses. You have premium pay for public employees. You have lost revenue with a great deal of flexibility, but when did you lose revenue? For instance, North Central Healthcare Nursing Home was not able to bring in new patients. There was a significant amount of lost revenue, and our expenses actually went up there, and the county has some lost revenue. And the final one is in infrastructure. And the areas that were outlined in the ARPA funding for infrastructure were specifically to broadband expansion and water and sewer projects. I know there's the potential to use other funds, but currently I would hazard a guess that we're oversubscribed for the ARPA funds, so we're not going to be able to meet all the requests. We had a request in. The thought was we should move ahead with the borrowing at this time because we're hoping to still receive favorable rates. And the rates are going to do nothing but go up in the future. So we look at this as a good opportunity to play some of that catch up with some of those deferred maintenance projects. You won't see $24 million on a normal basis for the total capital projects coming forward in the future. I think we're playing a little bit of that catch up.
Administrator would like to address that, also that question.
I think I understand the question, and I certainly appreciate the hesitancy. I just want to build on one thing that Chair Robinson talked about, and I'll refer again to the budget book. The first column, and again, there's the video of the HR Finance and Property meeting if you want to have more of a discussion about each of the various columns that we're talking about in this funding plan that was part of the budget and approved by the board, I think is helpful here. You'll see CIP fund balance, and what that means is you can see on an annual basis, we are spending a considerable amount of money on capital projects because, quite honestly, you, as the county, you own a lot of buildings that we need to maintain. We're in just one, and we have a great many, even in the major metro area. But you'll see the amount from that capital plan that we use for CIP fund balance is just shy of $8.4 million. So should ultimately the board make a determination to remove one project or another, you're going to continue to have ongoing capital needs for which your ability to access capital moving forward. My professional judgment today is consistent with what Committee Chair Robinson said. I don't see the cost of money going down. That's my professional judgment today. If something were to happen and facts change and my judgment would change, I'd come back. But Christy and I had that very conversation earlier this week. I certainly appreciate that perhaps there's an opportunity to move those projects around, but right now, based on what our capital needs are, my professional judgment would be to borrow for the amount you have, and then we can make changes to the capital list should it be advantageous in the future. The one thing I'll say, and it's not on autopilot, but there are certainly consequences if we choose to change the amount we're going to borrow today. The county board has identified the projects through the annual budget. We put out bids for those projects. You can see there's a lot of significant dollar amount here. We have, in my estimation, a fairly strong track record with contractors to secure positive favorable bids, because there's confidence that we're going to fund the projects we say we're gonna move forward with. If we start to change that dramatically, my professional judgment is that could come with significant consequences when you start, if you start raising questions about how if we're gonna be able to pay for these things, because a lot of these contracts are in place. So we need to find a funding source. And likewise, when you change borrowing, as was alluded to, the bond counsel prepares the documents, the amount of money that we're gonna go out for sale. When you start making significant changes, it can have an impact on your bond rating. Is that fair to say, Christy? She's nodding her head in the affirmative. I hope that answers your question, but it is you do have, on an annual basis, a significant amount of projects that do come before the board for capital improvement. Just based, quite honestly, on the number of buildings you have, the amount of roadways you'll have, you'll see that on here as well. You spend a significant amount of money maintaining that roadway system, and all the other rolling stock, vehicles, PC, IT infrastructure. There's a significant amount on that plan. Thank you.
Supervisor Sandelsky.
Thank you, Chairman. I just had a quick question, like on estimates for like different projects, like how many estimates they usually get? Do they get like 3, 4 average, average how many, like?
This is gonna be a lawyer answer. It depends. I mean, quite honestly, we've put out RFPs and I can think of one for a prospective project where we didn't get any responses. That was relative to the UW Stevens Point Wausau campus dormitory renovation. We were trying to take the temperature of the appetite of people to renovate that. Generally speaking, though, on significant construction projects, we've been using the construction manager at risk approach. And I don't know, Corp Council's probably got a better finger on the pulse of how many bid responses we've been getting, but I haven't heard that we've not been getting competitive bids. I don't know how better to answer that question.
Okay. Oh, so you're getting like a couple, at least a few different bids, like just to compare?
I'm just going off of the largest project we have going, and quite honestly, the largest project Marathon County's probably done in probably 50 years, is the North Central Healthcare Project, the campus project. And I know we've been receiving multiple bids for the primary phases of that project. Is that fair to say, Mike?
Absolutely. In the most recent round of bidding, which was for a small part of that, I think between 5 and 7 bidders for just a portion of the project. So, and I think that's been pretty consistent, if not at the low end of what we've been getting for that project.
All right, thank you.
Supervisor Shafinsky.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to build off of that and ask one additional question, and that is, when you get, for any given project, you get 5 bidders, 7, whatever, you get multiples. What is the decision-making process relative to picking, whoever we're going to award that contract to? And are there some statutory requirements about that process? Because, having been involved in construction, there's a difference between low dollars and value, and that can be a little bit more complicated than what it sometimes looks like from the outside.
I'll Corp Counsel wants to address that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a very good question. First of all, for these capital projects, and really for any capital project that involves what the statutes define as a public work, which would be, in the instance of North Central Healthcare, the building or renovation of buildings, there's very specific statutory requirements that the county has to follow when going out for bids. The main way that bids are analyzed under the statute is the county is actually required by state law to take the lowest responsive and responsible bid. So responsive meaning that the bidder has to be responsive to the request for bids. They have to meet the requirements that we put out. And responsible meaning it can't be a company that says, oh, I'll bid $5 to build North Central Healthcare Center, but they can't actually do it for $5, so they have to be able to back up their word. So there's some analysis there as to responsiveness and responsibility of the bidder, but determining a bidder to be non-responsible, so not able to accomplish a project, is also defined in our procurement code. So there's some very specific statutory and ordinance requirements that all departments have to follow when going out to bid. I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you very much.
And I'll just build on that a little bit. One of the ways we do that is we have a pretty in-depth pre-qualification process to identify those bidders that are qualified. Things such as require them to be bonded to a certain level. The one difference I'll say when you move beyond capital projects, to get to your point about how do you determine best value for Marathon County, we're able to do that in other areas that don't meet that statutory definition of public work. But again, as Sarah referenced, if you're looking for additional information on public work, Chapter 59 is your friend. It's spelled out right in Chapter 59 as to how counties are required to act.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we will proceed on to item 9C, 2C, resolution to award the sale of not to exceed $19,225,000 general obligation healthcare project building bonds, Series 22B, Resolution 39-22. This is also similar as the Finance Committee Chair Robinson pointed out. These are also bonds that will be going out for sale, and the information that is blank will be filled in at the day of sale. And again, these are bond council resolutions, and so they're not really subject to amending. Supervisor Robinson? Oh, okay, all right. Any other questions? Okay, we will move on to item 9C3 from Infrastructure Committee. Item 9C3A, Town of Emmett, request for financial aid to assist in access to the Big O Plain Park Road, Resolution 40-22. Any questions? Okay. Item 9C3B, a resolution to vacate a portion of the highway right-of-way, Resolution R-41-22. Any questions? Sure. The Corp Counsel would like to speak to the process on this resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to explain, this is a little bit of a cumbersome process. So statutorily, when a county is looking to vacate a right-of-way or a portion of a highway right-of-way, there's actually a specific process to follow. So when voting on Tuesday, a week from Tuesday, on this resolution, if this resolution is passed, what happens is a copy of it gets sent to the adjoining landowners who adjoin this right-of-way. Following up from that, we'll actually be hearing this resolution again in 40 days at a public hearing. That's just, the statutes require us to first pass the resolution indicating that we have an interest in vacating the right-of-way. That's what this action on your next meeting will be. Following up to that, the public gets to weigh in, including those landowners, as to whether they have an interest up or down. And then the board would act at that future meeting to finalize the vacation of the right-of-way. So it's kind of a two-step process. This is the first step. It's very cumbersome, especially for a small portion of a right-of-way, and I just wanted to explain, especially since you'll be seeing it again.
Any questions on that? Supervisor Covelli?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you explain what that means, the vacating the right-of-way?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In this specific instance, the portion of County Highway C in the town of Bergen that this resolution references, the highway itself is in a different spot than the right-of-way is on the plat map. So for whatever reason, the highway was built in a different place than what the map says that the right-of-way should be. So the result of that is there's some pieces of property that are within the right-of-way. Nothing can be done on those pieces of property, and there are some adjoining landowners that are looking to lease their land to Bug Tussle Wireless, I believe, for some broadband towers. So vacating the right-of-way allows the land to revert to the previous owner, which in this case is the adjoining landowner, to do with it what they will. That's basically what the action would do.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, that brings us down to item number 10, announcements and/or requests. There is one announcement that I will make, and that is Supervisory District 24. The supervisor who took the oath of office has resigned. And so the process that is spelled out in our board rules says we will solicit letters of interest from individuals from within that District 24, and we will be taking applications and letters of intent and letters of interest up until May 31st for that. And then as the board rules spell out, there will be an interview process for any of those that identify a letter of interest, and then there'll be a appointment for those individuals as a recommendation to the board on the June 21st. Supervisor Baker.
So I'm requesting that Corp Counsel and/or the Finance Department or whomever Lance would appoint would research and provide the board an opinion if Marathon County would be allowed to eliminate the will tax and replace the lost revenue with ARPA funding. I know that prior to litigation, using ARPA funding to reduce taxes was originally prohibited at the state level, but I haven't found a similar restriction at the county level. So just if the board would decide to do this, whether this would be legal or not. Thank you.
All right, any other announcements and/or requests? Oh, the Administrator, Leonard, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have just two quick things. First, you will, on your next agenda, a week from this coming Tuesday, there's an additional appointment that I failed to get into the packet. It's appointments for the Park Commission. You may recall from your original appointment packet and the intergovernmental agreement with the City of Wausau for our Parks Department, that the city has an appointment process. Two names were brought forward by the mayor, which is provided for in that intergovernmental agreement. They are for Alderperson Lou Larson and Alderperson Carol Lukens. And then the second announcement I have, if anyone is interested in sharing information with your constituents relative to the West Side Master Plan, there is a public meeting on Tuesday, May 17th from 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at Eastgate Hall in Marathon Park. Be a brief presentation to anyone that appears, and they'll have the opportunity to provide input to the consultants working on that master plan. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Any other announcements and/or requests? Okay, seeing none, we are down to item number 11. We have Supervisor Seifelt with a motion to adjourn and seconded by Supervisor Rosenberg. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adjournment signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. We stand adjourned. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.